for murders that he didn't commit.
So when Josh brought in Sheldon Johnson, it seemed this would be another positive episode, but it quickly became apparent that Sheldon was slightly different.
I figured we'd do something a little bit different. Typically, the person sitting to my right is someone that was wrongfully convicted. Sheldon is guilty.
Sheldon had only just been released from a 25-year prison stint, but Josh had brought him on specifically as an example of someone who'd been given an unfair amount of time, believing Sheldon never deserved his 25 years in prison. Well, you can be the judge of that. Born 1975, Sheldon Johnson grew up in the Martin Luther King Jr. Towers, aka a poverty-stricken housing project in Harlem, New York City. His entire family tree had been in and out of prisons.
My father was incarcerated. He did about 15 years. I was incarcerated. My grandfather was incarcerated. My great-grandfather was a slave. And my son killed somebody when he was 12 years old.
While Sheldon was the only one in his family who had functional hearing.
My mother's deaf, my father's deaf, my sister's deaf, my aunt is deaf. I grew up in a deaf household.
Therefore, his father, a drug dealer, brought Sheldon along to help him translate deals, and by the age of 12, Sheldon had joined the exact same line of work.
I started selling drugs. Guy offered me an opportunity to be a lookout, and I would just stand there, and eventually I just slowly moved up the ranks. It turned me into this person that I was never meant to be.
As a result, he began to rack up charges.
Driving without a license, standing on the corner, little small petty drug cases.
And spent most of his teens in the Rikers Island prison, although it'd be after his release at the age of 21 that things went downhill badly. He'd commit 2 different armed robberies, receiving a sentence of 50 years in prison, which Josh argued was incredibly unfair, given only one person received minor injuries.
He got hit in the head with the gun right here on the side of his head, and he had 2 stitches, and they gave me 25 years for that case.
Did you hit him in the head?
No.
Regardless, prison is where Sheldon realized he had to turn his life around.
It was at that moment I really said I have to change my life. I just can't do this.
Beginning a prison journal about hope, change, and reform. In his entry letter to my younger self, he'd explained just because you're surrounded by violence does not mean that violence is the way to solve your problems. Sheldon, 2 wrongs do not make a right. Violence only begets violence. Learn how to respond and not react. In a different entry he'd state, as we know, I'm currently in prison, which I've learned does one of 2 significant things to its occupants. Brings the best out of them or the worst.
I saw individuals who were at their worst, and I saw guys who were at their best. The guys who were at their best were guys who were involved in education, post-secondary education programs.
Realizing the role model prisoners were those with an education, Sheldon spent years educating himself.
I got into school, I got my GED, and then I went on to obtain my bachelor's in behavioral science from Mercy. I stopped smoking weed, I stopped smoking cigarettes. I started working in the law library. I discovered that I had a knack for complicated things, case law, and I was actually helping guys get out of prison.
He'd further add to his journal, I have grown dramatically in these 14 years, when I could have easily withered away. I've learned that I love Shakespeare, that I love acting, that I love writing, that I enjoy reading philosophy, that I love reading criminal law, that I love writing legalese. Sheldon had changed his life to such an extent, BuzzFeed advocated for his release back in 2016. He became a model inmate, said David Roth, the prison social worker. His days were so full that he went to bed exhausted and fell asleep immediately. As a result of his good behavior, Sheldon was released after 25 years of his 50-year sentence, appearing on a podcast called Success After Lockdown, on which he'd implied that he'd never go back to prison.
I'm reflecting, I'm saying to myself like, yo, I can't spend the next 50 years like this.
When he'd appear on Joe Rogan 1 month later, Sheldon again implied that he wouldn't go back to jail.
Individuals who have been shown to acquire associate's degrees and bachelor's degrees are like 92% less likely to return back to prison.
With Josh using Sheldon as an example, that change was always possible.
How do you make change happen? He's living it and making it happen. Look at this beautiful mind and how he articulates himself.
He began working for the Queen's Defenders, helping troubled youth.
I'm trying to catch these kids before they fall, and I want to show them the way.
And even began to consider more formal education.
Sheldon asked me, should I go to law school before we came here?
In the process expressing his disbelief that he'd turned his life around.
I just came from the bowels of hell. 25 years in prison, and now I'm in the sky above the clouds in the heavens, headed to a destination to talk about change and to talk about all of the things that brought me to this place today.
Joe Rogan even posted a clip titled, "Sentenced to 50 years, Sheldon Johnson decided to turn his life around." However, Sheldon would make one final important claim.
But this is how fast your life can change from just one simple mistake.
This became reality only 38 days later.
He claimed that he had turned his life around after spending most of his adult life in prison. In fact, last year, he started working for the Queen's Public Defender's Office. Well, now he is accused of killing a man and then dismembering his body.
Sheldon was childhood friends with a man named Colin Small, with whom he'd also spent over 10 years in prison. Therefore, upon Sheldon's release, Small was helping Johnson get back on his feet. However, at some point, their friendship took a turn. On the 6th of March 2024, police received a call from a tenant who lived in New York, claiming to have heard 2 gunshots from Colin Small's apartment, as well as a voice begging, "Please don't, I have a family." Police drove over to the flat and knocked on the door, only to find Sheldon Johnson inside, who claimed that Colin Small had apparently gone upstate. Well, police searched the apartment and found half of Colin Small's body, finding the other half back at Sheldon's apartment, in addition to concrete and a Tyvek suit. CCTV outside Colin's apartment showed Sheldon Johnson entering and exiting, trying to conceal his identity with a range of different disguises. In one of these stills, he's seen wearing the exact same jacket as he was in a photo he took for the Queen's Defenders. Sheldon was therefore arrested and charged with Colin's murder, screaming "I'm innocent" as he was placed into the cop car. Sheldon maintained this innocence all the way to court.
Yesterday, Sheldon Johnson pleaded not guilty to the charges. He had quite a few supporters inside the courtroom.
As the comments on his episode changed overnight. Imagine being locked up for being wronged by the system for over 25 years, only to prove that the system was right. Amazing. The judge who gave him 50 years must feel pretty smart right now. "I really believed I was gonna die in prison." Well, you're not wrong, buddy. Sheldon's own father stated, "I'm surprised my son was arrested. I was shocked. He learned and studied in prison for 26 years. He is a good man. He was doing work in a law office. There were no problems, but I doubt nobody was as shocked as Josh Dubin." He ended Sheldon Johnson's episode stating,
I'm very thoughtful in who I bring on. I think this was one of the best ones yet.
but is still yet to talk publicly since Sheldon's new allegations. Joe, on the other hand, talked about it recently.
He was guilty before, and we knew he was guilty, but he got 50 years.
Right.
And then he was talking about he turned his life around, and this like a month after he was on the podcast,
Yeah.
cut some dude's head off. Homie didn't understand new HD security cameras.
Theorizing that prison had only made him worse.
Was that because he spent 25 fucking years in jail, which is an insane amount of time to
Yeah.
be locked up in a prison and then expect to acclimate.
When you hear the words visionary and multi-billion-dollar empire, who comes to mind? But what if I tell you that the most overlooked entrepreneur of our generation might be this guy?
I don't give a fuck.
In the last 20 years, Dana White turned a bankrupt company into one of the biggest sports promotion in the world.
And everybody's like, wow, that's the greatest investment in the history of mankind. Well, let me tell you the rest of the story.
And you don't accomplish that without making a few enemies.
There's plenty of people that would like to assault me. Get in line.
Some of them coming from unexpected places.
He's not a good person. He seems to have lost his character somewhere along the way.
Standing in Dana's shadow, a few powerful men operate away from the spotlight, turning what was once an illegal operation into the fastest growing sport of our generation.
Someday, everyone will talk about the UFC.
This is the sport of the future.
Between political disasters, drug scandals, and encounters with the mafia, if the rise of the UFC from its ashes isn't one of America's greatest success stories, it certainly is the most controversial one. Starts when the UFC's dying at UFC 27.
It was nothing that what we expected. There was no energy in the crowd. We walk in the arena, 1/16 full. There's nobody there. I wanted to buy a program. They didn't have a program. I want to buy a t-shirt. You can buy a t-shirt.
This man looks calm and collected, but don't let it fool you. He's a straight-up business savage. The name is Lorenzo Fertitta.
And if you really know the history of the Fertittas and what they've built and what they've done, incredible businessmen. He and his brother Frank Fertitta own Station Casinos, which is the third or fourth largest gaming company in the country.
So I'm sitting at the fight with Dana and I'm going,
Imagine if they did this, and imagine if they did that. This thing could be big.
either there's something really wrong with us, or this business just isn't being run the right way.
And you can blame it on these guys. Rorion Gracie, Art Davie, and Bob Merowitz founded the UFC in 1993 under Semaphore Entertainment Group, SEG.
There was a quote from TV Guide after the first UFC. This is the bloodiest, most brutal spectacle in the history of mankind.
It was one of those things you kind of wanted to watch, but, didn't know if you should be.
It was basically old marketing by the old owners just to make it sound crazy.
If SEG made one key mistake, it was pissing off the wrong American hero.
Well, eventually Senator John McCain stepped in.
What it was at the beginning was human cockfighting. It was. I mean, I've seen people repeatedly getting smashed in the face with a guy sitting on top of them. That's not a sport.
He said, what are you doing? You can't go put on fights that aren't regulated by the Athletic Commission.
There was no referee. There was nothing. It was terrible.
The owner basically said, trust me when I say this. I've been in business for a long time. You can't mess with the government. Tell the government you're not going to do what they want you to do. See what happens.
McCain leads a campaign to ban the UFC across the U.S. He pressures cable companies to stop showing UFC events.
John McCain to ban Ultimate Fighting, taking it too far.
When that happens, Gracie and Davie ditch SEG, leaving Bob Merowitz alone at the helm of the UFC.
So now, the cable companies wouldn't put them on pay-per-view. The ATM machine was cut off.
Check this out. Those are the revenues of the UFC per event from UFC 1 to UFC 27. Little did Bob know, the two guys who would end up saving his ass were sitting right there at UFC 27. And one of them prepared his entire life for that moment.
I had a hardcore upbringing, I was the broke kid. My dad was an alcoholic and was never around. And when he did show up, you didn't want him around. You know what I mean? I come from a single mom who worked hard and didn't have a lot of money. So me and my sister were home a lot alone. One of the things I think about growing up alone is, there's a lot of stuff that you have to learn on your own.
He just had this great personality. People were attracted to him. They wanted to be his friend. They like hanging out with him.
You went to school with Lorenzo, your partner now.
Me and Dana go way back to the time we were like 14, 15 years old. Knew each other all through high school.
I got kicked out of high school a bunch of times. I was just never a school guy.
I mean, Dana has a high school education and that's it.
I was a bouncer. I did paving. I worked at the Four Seasons as a bellman. My mother used to tell me that I was going to be just like my father and not amount to anything. And I was going to be pumping gas into my friends' cars. My mom did a lot of shit like that. And I'm not saying that that's what drove me, but that didn't hurt. I always knew I wanted to be in the fight business.
Half the battle in life is figuring out who you are and what you want to do for the rest of it.
I was literally standing in the lobby one day, and I'm like, what the hell am I doing here? And I walked out the front door, and one of my good friends, who was the doorman, says, what are you doing? I said, I'm quitting. He's like, what? What are you going to do? I said, I want to be in the fight business. He said, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life.
After high school, kind of went our own ways. I went off to college. He went off and did what he did in Boston.
Dana moves from Vegas to Boston, where he starts teaching boxing.
So I was involved in boxing, then I had boxing gyms.
And it doesn't take long before trouble finds him.
One day I'm actually in there teaching a class, and these guys literally walk right into the middle of the class. And they're like, hey, we need to talk to you. And I said, I'm teaching a class here. And they're like, we need to talk to you outside. They start asking me if I know who they are, and I don't.
When he walked down the street, the sidewalk shook. We're talking about the notorious mobster James Whitey Bulger.
He was the inspiration for Jack Nicholson's character in the movie The Departed.
Happy lies the crown, sort of thing.
Johnny Depp also played him in Black Mass.
The last thing I would do if I was planning to harm you is to warn you in advance, you dumb.
Give me 3 words that describe Whitey Bulger.
With Asana, AI teammates can help level up your goals by connecting them to relevant projects, so every team knows their role in the bigger picture. Asana, the #1 AI work management platform. Try for free today at asana.com.
Stone cold killer.
That's Southie, where he did most of his crime. He murdered people there, he buried people there, and he went to sleep there.
Whitey Bulger had a guy who worked under him, and his name was Kevin Weeks. Yeah, they wanted $2,500 from me. 21 years old, you might as well ask me for $25,000. Right. I didn't have $2,500.
What do you do?
I ignored him. I didn't do anything. I tried to avoid him for a while, and you can only avoid that shit for so long. And months went by, and one day I got a call at my apartment. The guy's like, you got till tomorrow at 1 to pay us. And I said, or what? When are you gonna find out what? I said, okay. I hung up the phone, picked it back up and called Delta and got a one-way ticket to Vegas.
Dana moves back to Vegas where he reconnects with Lorenzo Fertitta.
And at the time, I was on the Nevada State Athletic Commission, so we obviously had some common interests.
And we started taking jiu-jitsu. Through that, we started to meet a lot of the fighters, and we were blown away by these guys. I started to represent and manage Chuck the Iceman Liddell and Tito Ortiz. And I got into this huge contract battle over Tito's contract with the old owner.
That's how Dana ends up sitting at a table with Bob Merowitz.
We got into this contract battle over Tito Ortiz's contract. I was talking about pay-per-view, and he flipped out. He says, there is no pay-per-view, there's no money. And he freaks out, and I was like, holy shit, this thing's in trouble. They were going bankrupt. We hung up, I called Frank and Lorenzo.
So Lorenzo, I just heard that the UFC is gonna be sold.
These guys are in big trouble, they're losing money. I think we can buy it.
So I called Bob, literally cold called him, and he was looking for somebody to put up $1 million for 50% of the company. I ended up calling back and just said, look, we'd be interested in doing the deal, but we want to buy the whole thing.
And a month later, we own the company.
So the Fertitta brothers create a parent company that owns the UFC. They call it Zuffa, which means to fight in Italian. Zuffa's very first employee is Dana White.
They made me the president of the company, and they gave me 10%. My office was a broom closet with a telephone when we started this thing. Everybody they had, all these smart guys and all these geniuses that came from Harvard and everywhere else, hated this thing.
Do you agree with Dana that MMA will one day be the biggest sport in the whole world?
I do, I really do, and I know that sounds crazy.
You want to be bigger than the NFL. That's going to be hard.
Well, not on a global basis.
The NFL. There's nothing bigger than the NFL. It's huge.
And yet, NFL Europe failed twice.
In India, cricket's huge. I don't know about you, but I don't give a shit about cricket. Soccer is big all over the world. It's not that big here. And the list goes on and on of sports that work in other countries and don't work in other countries. The one thing that I believe would work everywhere is fighting. I don't care what color you are, what country you come from, or what language you speak. Fighting is in our DNA. We get it and we like it. We're human beings.
The challenges that Dana had to take on to pull the UFC out of its misery would be seen by many as impossible.
People think I swear a lot now. You should have heard me the first 3 years of this company.
First of all, when they bought the UFC, all they got for $2 million was pretty much just a logo.
You bought the name and a
old wooden octagon
for $2 million.
Yeah, and I think we had like 11 guys under contract. He had sold everything off. The DVD rights, all the old library, the video game rights, the merchandise rights, all the things that you need to build a brand were gone. We didn't even own UFC.com. UFC.com used to be user-friendly computers.
He's dealing with a sport that is banned on TV, banned in most states, and banned internationally.
Venues did not want the UFC. This wasn't allowed on pay-per-view. Porn is on pay-per-view. Our goal was to buy it and get it on free television. People thought that that was insane.
UFC stars like Ken Shamrock or Mark Coleman are gone, either to wrestling or to Japan, where the UFC's biggest competitor, Pride FC, is killing it.
The only two companies in this world that matter are the UFC and Pride.
In 2001, Pride was already filling up stadiums in Japan, a country culturally much more accepting of mixed martial arts. They have the best fighters in the world, including the American ones.
And make no mistake about it, the UFC is coming here to kick your ass. Every day when I came in here, it was war. And that's literally what I did. I'd stand and yell on the phone, F you, F you.
Dana, congratulations on your first show. That's got to feel good.
Thank you very much, James. You know what I did? I went to the bookstore and I bought books on marketing. I bought books on finance. I bought books on PR. That was how I learned. You have to understand what my job is. What my job is, in this day and age, I have to convince you to stay home on Saturday when you've been busting your ass at school all week, working, all the other things you got to do. You probably want to go out and meet some girls or take your girl out to dinner or go to a movie. I have to convince you to stay home on Saturday and pay $55 to watch my event.
Dana's #1 priority is to legitimize and clean up the brand so it's perceived as an actual sport.
We want to make this the Super Bowl of mixed martial arts.
So we did the exact opposite. We ran toward regulation.
The UFC starts by adopting a set of unified rules, which give legitimacy to the sport and ammunition when negotiating with athletic commissions.
And we met with California, Nevada, New York, New Jersey, and the list goes on and on. And we went to these state athletic commissions and said, This is a real sport. These guys are real athletes. I mean, I had to fly to places and literally had to wait outside people's offices for them to come out and grab them. They didn't want anything to do with the UFC.
What's your superpower there?
That I'm a savage. I get out there and I'll outwork anybody.
But Dana also puts a team on its feet.
Well, my name is Lawrence Epstein, first of all. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of the Ultimate Fighting Championship. I'm responsible for day-to-day operations of the company.
He also hires the Executive Director of the Nevada State Athletic Commission, Mark Ratner.
It was a hard decision for me to make, but it's pretty hard to tell Lorenzo and Dana no.
The Senior Vice President of Government and Regulatory Affairs. Did I get that right?
That's exactly right, yes, sir.
And what does that title mean exactly?
It means I go around to states and countries to get the sport of MMA approved and...
To make sure that the absolute best fights are put on, Joe Silva and Sean Shelby become the UFC's official matchmakers.
I've been with UFC since about UFC 3, and I just had a good eye for it.
They also scout talent.
If there's a fight on camera, we've probably seen it between the two of us.
And you buy my fight for $55, you better be entertained.
In order to improve the production quality of all the events, the UFC keeps all the TV production in-house.
So then we all had to dive in and learn about production.
They appoint a veteran ESPN producer, Bruce Connell, as lead producer. He also brings into the fold a certain Fear Factor host.
I'll be interviewing the fighters as they come out of the octagon. Anything we need to know, as soon as I find out, you'll know. I was losing money. I would make more money doing a weekend at a comedy club than I would doing the UFC. And I did like 12 of them for free. Like the UFC didn't have any money. And I said, look, just get me there, get me my friends' tickets, and I'll do it. I'm a huge fan of Ultimate Fighting, all mixed martial arts.
The ridiculous amount of money that goes into fueling all those efforts start to take their toll on the Fertitta brothers.
We were burning cash. We ended up burning like $44 million. And this thing really isn't getting any traction yet.
Lorenzo called me one day. I was in my office and he's like,
when do we pull the plug on this thing? Is this thing gonna work?
I can't keep doing this to my family and blowing all my family's money on this thing, man. Get out there and see what you can sell this thing for. And I was like, I called him back at the end of the day and I said, maybe we can get 5 or 6 million for this thing.
Lorenzo calls you the next day and it essentially says, F it.
He literally said,
okay, so he literally says, F it.
Fuck it. Let's keep going.
The UFC throws a Hail Mary attempt and takes a page out of professional wrestling.
I've told people for years, I've worked for the UFC for like 8 years now, the only reason why professional wrestling does big buy rates on pay-per-view is because they have a weekly television show that acts like an infomercial for it.
We said, we need to come up with a reality show. Literally, me and my team went into my office at like 8 o'clock at night and we bounced a zillion different concepts around, and that's the one we came up with. So all these guys live in a house. For those of you that don't know, they're coached by 2 big stars in the UFC. Every time you fight and you lose, you get eliminated.
It's about, do you want to be a fighter? Anybody who says they don't, I don't want you here.
And it would end with a finale. 2 guys fight in the finale. 1 guy becomes the Ultimate Fighter and gets a contract with the UFC.
The idea is to use reality TV as a Trojan horse to sneak MMA on cable TV.
But at the end of every episode, there's a live fight. You know what I mean? There was a fight that would be on TV.
That was the last $10 million investment the brothers were putting in. This is it. We're going to give this thing a shot. If it works, good. If it doesn't, that's a wrap. It's over.
So we're $44 million in the hole, and we're out trying to pitch this thing to television.
We were literally begging everybody to take us on TV. We couldn't find anybody.
They're terrified to put this thing on. That's the other thing. In the television business, nobody has any balls.
We ultimately found Viacom Spike Network,
calling themselves the Men's Network.
For the ones ensuring the job always gets done, and the ones wearing many hats, Grainger offers professional-grade industrial supplies and real-time product availability. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
We're like, oh, this is perfect for us. The network for men, they can't deny this. We give them the pitch. They couldn't wait to get the out of this meeting.
And they said they wouldn't pay us for the content.
So what we said is, how about if we pay for it and give it to you for free? Oh, they like that idea a lot better. We threw this thing on Spike TV with 0 advertising, and the fucking thing goes like this, takes off. The ratings were through the roof.
But halfway through the season, the president of Spike gets fired.
They had made all these promises to me and everything else, all dead. So we go through this whole season. It's unbelievably successful, and we honestly didn't know if we were going to have a second season. We go into the finale. We have no deal. Nothing. Kenny Florian fights a guy named Diego Sanchez. They go out there and fight. Diego Sanchez smokes him in like 40 seconds. Terrible. We've got 2 hours of programming to fill, and I'm like, oh my God, this is a nightmare. But the savior, Stephan Bonner and Forrest Griffin. So these two guys come out, light heavyweights, and they put on the sickest fight you have ever seen in your life.
And the numbers during the fight went just like this.
The place is going crazy.
People were stomping their feet, and it sounded like a train was going through the arena. And at the end of the fight, people were chanting, one more round, one more round.
Yeah. We ended up giving both guys a UFC contract that night, which made the place even go crazier.
I knew when that fight was over, it didn't matter if we did another deal with Spike TV or didn't do another deal. We did it. We made it. We were going somewhere.
Yeah. We literally got up out of our chairs, walked out into the alley, and cut the deal for season 2.
We cut a new deal on a napkin.
I know that sounds dramatic, but it's true. If that first season didn't happen, I would not be sitting here right now.
It's the craziest story ever. You literally couldn't write this shit.
After that success, the UFC doubles down on Spike TV programming. They create UFC Unleashed, Fight Nights, and Countdowns, also a video game, UFC Undisputed. In doing so, they develop a self-sustaining feedback loop. Check this out. You can see their strategy has 4 aspects: attract, convert, immerse, and extend. You attract people by airing content for free. Then you convert them to pay-per-view. Finally, you throw more experiences and product their way. It's always about feeding more and more people into that loop. So what the UFC ends up needing more than anything is content. And somehow the mob comes to the rescue. In Japan, a rumor starts going around that Japanese mafia, the Yakuzas, are involved with Pride FC. They are using the organization to launder money by gambling on fights and fixing them. Once the cable companies learn that, they cut all ties with the organization. Pride FC practically goes bankrupt within the span of a year. And guess who buys them? The UFC jumps on the opportunity, acquiring all their fighters and entire library of content in the process. The UFC starts airing free fights the same nights that their competitors have pay-per-views. So if you're the average mixed martial arts fan on a Saturday night, would you rather pay to watch a second-tier organization or just watch some of the best UFC and Pride fights for free on TV? That's how the UFC destroys competition.
Is WEC merging with the UFC?
Yes.
UFC has purchased Strikeforce. Is that true?
That is true.
When they buy them out, they get even more content to add to their library, which they can air for free and drive more competition out of business. It's exponential.
We've got a library of 20,000 hours of original content.
Why did you go out and purchase Strikeforce?
We need more fights. We need more fights, more fights.
In 2011, one of Dana's biggest goals comes to fruition.
We ended up doing a huge deal with Fox.
Because this is a really, really big day.
This is what I always wanted. What we have is a lot of content. We needed to get our content out there, and they spread our content across all their platforms.
Fox is the #1 network in the country.
And all those people out there that thought I was a lunatic 10 years ago when I said that this was going to be the biggest sport in the world.
Some still do. Some still do.
I know.
Call it a coincidence, but a few months after the Fox deal, ESPN comes after the UFC.
You ever hear of John Skipper?
No.
John Skipper ran ESPN. Hates UFC.
Hates it.
Hates it.
Let's talk about Fox Sports. Okay, so these guys have just launched.
We're happy. We like competition. It's fun.
They release an Outside the Lines piece, which targets UFC's practices, but more specifically, fighter pay.
ESPN doesn't care about the sport. ESPN hates this sport. They won't even cover it. They're dirty. They're dirty. They lie. And they never really give you all the facts.
The piece is followed by an antitrust lawsuit against the UFC.
The multi-billion-dollar antitrust lawsuit it's currently facing from former UFC fighters.
We filed this case in December of 2014 on behalf of a group of mixed martial arts fighters who fought for the UFC.
The government came after us and called us a monopoly.
I do believe they have a monopoly. I don't know how anyone could think they don't.
The lawsuit claims the UFC, quote, engaged in an illegal scheme to eliminate competition.
I mean, anyone that starts to even be up and coming at all, they buy them out or they drive them out.
That allows it to pay fighters, quote, a fraction of what they would earn in a competitive marketplace.
We're spending, $7-8 million a year trying to defend ourselves from the government as a monopoly.
It works. The government dropped the case. The UFC keeps on expanding.
There was a time when
Marshall Zalaznik was one of the most powerful people in the UFC.
What is your job? To find opportunities in the international market outside of the U.S. and Canada.
Fighters are key when it comes to expansion in international markets. They open up the door to the countries. George St. Pierre opens up Canada. Michael Bisping opens up the UK.
We've added about 20 states in the last 3 years.
We're everywhere but New York and getting close.
And they've cleaned up their act enormously.
We've done fights in Australia, all throughout Europe.
In Scandinavia, Italy.
We're doing Poland this year.
To do the first event in the Middle East is very, very thrilling.
2 years ago, we did 1 fight in Brazil. Last year, we did 3. We'll do 7 this year and 9 next year.
We're very bullish on what India can be.
We just put on an event over in Macau. It was the most successful event in the history of Macau.
We break the arena records with ticket sales. It's usually us and the Rolling Stones. Abu Dhabi now is a partner. These guys are 10% partners too.
Ireland. Those fans feel like you're neglecting them. What's going on there?
What's up, to the UFC, man?
Yeah, thank you very much.
Conor McGregor opens up Europe. He's followed by Ronda Rousey, who starts a female division.
Weili Zhang, our Chinese world champion, when she became a champion, she ignited China.
And finally, after 8 years of negotiations, Mark Ratner gets MMA legalized in the state of New York.
And when I heard the final vote tally, that was the emotional moment for me.
Congratulations on passing the bill. It was a long time coming. I think this really completes the journey for MMA.
An 8-year gestation period? Was that what that was?
That was exactly right. And so this is the baby, and now we'll have the big coming out party November 12th. The big moment for me was at the Garden when Conor is fighting Eddie, and the excitement, the crowd, the energy. That was the special night.
The Fertittas were ready to get out, and they sat me down and said, we're going to sell this thing. And I didn't believe it was going to happen at all. You know, these are my best friends. We'd done it together. And I went up into a hotel room and didn't come out for a few days.
Wow.
Didn't sleep, didn't eat, and Lorenzo had to come get me out of there. Lorenzo looked at me and he says, dude, I'm done. Be happy for me. And then I got it.
And sold it for? $4.025 billion.
The transaction was the largest in sports history.
This is the man who buys the UFC, Ari Emanuel.
The king of Hollywood. Doing deals like this is what he does.
Here's the catch. To be able to buy the UFC, Ari Emanuel borrows $1.8 billion. When his company merges with UFC Holdings, UFC takes on $2.3 billion of debt. The interest amounts to $98 million per year.
Our Fox deal is up, and we're probably not going to end up doing another deal with Fox. John Skipper's never, ever going to take the UFC. So we're in a real tough place.
Here's a shocker. New details revealed about the resignation of the former president of ESPN.
John Skipper's cocaine dealer is going to rat him out.
What?
What?
He says he resigned because his drug dealer tried to extort him.
So he has to step down from ESPN right at the time that we're trying to make a TV deal.
So UFC is going to be on ESPN now.
Yeah.
No more Fox.
No more
That's
Fox.
done.
The UFC on ESPN. We just did a deal with ESPN for $1.5 billion. And now the company's worth $7 billion.
The deal requires the UFC to put on 42 events per year in exchange for $750 million. But then 2020 happens.
Was the toughest thing I've ever had to navigate in the history of this company. And if you look at where we came from, that's actually saying something.
Endeavor's revenue plunges by 80%.
Companies start laying off big percentages of the workforce. You did not lay people off.
No.
We're 4 months into the year, and the UFC has only put on 8 fights out of 42.
Dana calls me up. He said, get me an island. I said, what? He said, get me an island.
Fight Island. Now, is that a clever name? No. Is it the perfect name? Yes.
I have a really good relationship with the royal family in Abu Dhabi.
You ought to be ashamed of yourself.
There's still a medical danger here.
Dana's way off here, way wrong. I wouldn't even tell the media where we were holding events because these scumbags would start calling and trying to get it shut down.
That allowed you to keep your sport on the air when everything else was shut down.
Right. We're supposed to do 43. That year we did 42.
We gained a lot of fans because there was nothing to gamble on. So sports bettors started betting on UFC. When other people weren't playing, our fan base grew 46%.
We're now one of the top 4 sports in the United States.
The Big Four has changed.
Exactly. The Big Four has changed. We've been doing the impossible since 2001.
Nothing is impossible.
If you're in business with me, don't tell me no. Nobody in this building ever says no.
If you had one thing that you learned throughout your journey in building the UFC that you could pass along to the next generations, what would that be?
There's a lot of...
I tell young people now all the time, I definitely tell my kids, if you are even remotely a savage, you'll run these people over. So it's all out there for the taking right now.
I just keep saying it. There's no reason to be that mean and cruel to people all the time.
I actually like chaos.
Yeah, you must.
If I don't have it, I'll create it in my own personal life.
Don't believe I've ever brought him up to behave like that.
I'm a savage.
Yeah, I know.
And I was raised by a single mother.
Is there something to that? My mother used to tell me that I was going to be just like my father and not amount to anything.
I would love to see him change, but to have my old Dana back.
For the small group of savages out there, run these kids right over, man. Run them all over.
Do you still love your son?
Of course I do.
There are two sides to every story, and on the other side of this one stand the UFC fighters and the main issue at hand, fighter pay. I covered the topic entirely in this video, so make sure you check it out. It's quite the perspective shift. Thanks for watching, guys, and take care. There's only one way to describe the Diaz brothers.
Fucking savage. Gangster. Gangster.
But even gangsters can hide dark tragedies.
You guys already know what it is. Real G's come from California, America, motherfucker.
There's not enough room for the both of us. Look, if you ever calling me, call me number one. Oops, I did it again, about to double up. Look, up here, definition of a leveled up. All my celebrations always been premeditated, always been a step ahead. That's why you finish seconds later. Difference between us, I go back to back, you back to basics.
It started with a fight Nick was supposed to lose.
The history of Nick Diaz started with Robbie Lawler.
Robbie Lawler was this dark destroyer. Everybody was scared of him. He was a spooky dude. He was flatlining people.
I know you're not a KO guy, but, you know, I don't know.
How do you know that?
Oh, that's what it says. Maybe you're going to prove everyone wrong.
Well, how do you feel against Robbie Lawler? How do you feel? I feel like I'm going to get the out of me.
Born in Stockton, California, his first fight came at the tender age of 17.
The first thing he does, he gets into the octagon. He looks over at Robbie, goes, "Stockton, motherfucker, Stockton!" And Robbie's like, "What the fuck is he talking about? What does that even mean?"
They had never seen anything like that.
Nick took that shit talking to DEFCON 5. It's on! The entire time the fight is going on, like, "What, bitch? What we doing, bitch? What we doing, bitch?" And then he'd hit him. "Oh, bitch, I just stung you, bitch." And he'd be popping him. And Robbie Lawler didn't talk back to him, but you could clearly see he didn't anticipate that. Robbie might be fighting off one different shit.
Talking shit, fearing for your life, getting into fights. That's just another day in Stockton, California.
It's not a place you go if you have dreams. Like, Stockton, California is a place, you know, where your dreams die.
So there is no opportunity there.
Then to be fixing drugs in your backyard and your yard too. We see people all throwing up all over the place around here.
Everybody's parents were dealing dope, and house was a meth lab or something.
My mom couldn't afford to feed us, and really, so I had to put food on the table at like 12 years old, 11 years old. I had to sell crack. You feel what I'm saying?
And we see money every day when people be doing something. We want to do it too.
You know, everybody else's parents were like selling dope. They were going to school with nice clothes. I was like, what? And my mom's like working 8-hour days at a restaurant for 30 years.
Mom, say hi.
Hi.
You're a single mom?
Single mom.
Where was your dad?
My dad wasn't around like that, you know what I mean? It's not like I had guidance, you know what I mean? Like, my mom put me in swimming, and my grandfather's a track coach. I go running all the time around my neighborhood, out of the bad neighborhood and into a good neighborhood.
Running down the road at 2 in the morning, like middle of the night, all of a sudden you drive by in your car and see some kid out running.
Everybody be like, hey, there goes your brother, working out all the time. What's his problem, you know? I'm like, I don't know, that's what he likes to do.
It's just the way he was. Nick was Nick, and Nick was gonna do what he was gonna do, and if he felt like doing that at that moment, that's what he was gonna do.
It's hard to wake up in the morning and see my brother run out the door and not just hopping up and following the lead, you know?
And Nick, more than anything else, was a big brother / father figure for Nate. Nick has always been the older brother leader that took Nate on this path, on this journey.
Hey, I wouldn't call any of us troublemakers growing up. Sometimes trouble would find you.
More often than not, trouble found Nick.
So people have always kind of looked at me and wanted to fight me, or thought they could fight me or beat me or something. Like, ever since as long as I can remember.
I was never like picking on people or anything like that. It was more the other way around. I was insecure. I was broke. He was always told he's not going to make it. He was always told you don't belong here and you're not one of these rich kids. High school was hard time. High school was hard time.
People carrying guns just to protect themselves. People carrying guns just to act hard.
And you don't know if you're gonna get shot or stabbed or jumped at school because that's what happens to everybody else.
You know, I had a lot of anxiety just like before fights, you know. I gotta go to school and fight.
An ass whooping was coming my way, so I needed to come out on top. I needed to do something for me, for my family, for my brother.
The bullying, the picking, did that happen to you as a kid, and is that why you don't tolerate it? Okay.
Hell nah.
That never happened to you?
No, I had a big brother, man.
What happened was, you know, I'd end up in these confrontations all the time because...
There was a girl, Stephanie.
I was dating this girl. Her boyfriend before me, he's friends with all the gangsters on the football team, so, you know.
And I'd be like, hey, you. You know what I mean?
I just got in fights with them.
I focused my high school years worried about what Stephanie and her friends would think if I lost a fight to her ex-boyfriend and football friends.
I started training jiu-jitsu when I was 16 years old.
Well, when he first came in, I just saw some potential with this kid, and usually you don't see potential right away.
I asked him, I said, hey, aren't you supposed to be in school? And he goes, I'd rather come here and train.
He was like, I ain't going to school no more. He was like 15 years old.
He was in there all day. And then I started having real confidence.
It was something that he could do his way.
And as Nick tries to stay out of trouble, Nate dives right into it.
In high school, I was hanging out with people and probably shouldn't be hanging out with.
Gangs were trying to recruit him because he had a reputation of being tough. My brother was getting into gang fights and fights on the street. I got stabbed.
Well, he said, Steve, I need to get my brother. My brother's hanging around with the wrong crowd. I don't want my brother getting involved in gangs.
Nate jumped in head first to that journey. He said, that's what my brother's doing, and that's what I'm gonna do.
We'd go to Blockbuster, and he would rent all the UFCs, and we'd watch them all.
He's put me on paths and directions that I didn't even know that he was putting me on, you know? Nick's been my fearless leader, man, you know?
Before I ever had my first pro fight, my friend had a party at his house. The night before, Stephanie had told me she loved me. After the party, there was a wreck on the freeway. I jumped the fence and saw only one car and ambulances. Stephanie had walked and killed herself on the freeway. The girl I loved more than anything had tried to kill herself for the third time and succeeded. After that, I was grown up. It was all over. I wasn't a kid anymore. I won my first fight in the first round with a choke, and all I could think about was her. I would run 7 miles and back to her grave just to promise her I would make it as a fighter. Like she knew, and had told me she knew, and was proud of me.
I got to sacrifice a lot, you know, and I end up losing a lot in life. I mean, like, it really takes its toll. And I'll never get back what I lost.
It felt good to see my brother win a fight.
Ready? Let's play! My name is Nick Diaz. I live in Stockton, California. Trained mixed martial arts since I was about 16. It's how I make a living now. Do Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, MMA, and professional boxing.
Everywhere I thought, everything he did, if he ran, I ran. If I didn't push it, he didn't push it, I didn't push it. If he whipped ass, I whipped ass. Whatever happened, happened.
Body and head, a brilliant performance.
Yeah, real quick, please. I'd like to dedicate this performance tonight, this whole night, and everything to a few friends of mine that passed away. First off, a special girl, very special girl in my life, named Stephanie Wise, and my friend Tony Booth, all from Stockton.
And as he enters the UFC, Nick finds himself facing the same challenges he tried to escape.
Hi, Nick, how you feel?
Hi, I feel good. Yeah.
Yeah?
Oh, great. Then they put these cameras on me. I'm sitting here waiting to fight, and then I'm back in high school.
He was the exact same kid. He doesn't make eye contact, talks very slow and deliberate, takes a breath between words.
It's a mess, and you're like, oh, I want to show you the camera, I want to show you the camera. I'm like, take the camera out of my face already.
When you ask me why he gets upset, it's his inability to express himself verbally.
Did you get hurt, though? I mean, I know you do have cuts and stuff, but I mean, are you actually...
What happens from fighting, you know? You get punched. No, I'm just ready to go home and eat, you know what I'm saying? The quicker I get through these days here, the quicker I get to go home.
And the tension between Nick and the UFC starts ramping up.
When you're in the UFC, there's certain things that you have to do, have to promote this fight.
Nick doesn't train and fight to get people's approval. Nick does it to survive because he knows this is his one shot.
Nick Diaz was a no-show. We haven't heard from him. I haven't talked to him again. He hasn't returned my call.
Your history of missing
appointments like this. Like,
it's hard for me to show up in the middle of training, go back and forth.
All I asked this kid to do is play the game this much.
You know, all this negativity towards me, they're not coming from where I'm from, you know.
Why is there a segment of the population that misunderstands you, potentially doesn't like you?
I'd say, I guess not a good influence, a great role model.
My brother's the most important thing to me, more important than anything.
In order to love fighting, I have to hate it. There's no love in this without hate. And if you ain't there to where you hate it, then good luck trying to love this shit.
And while Nick gets the stick from the UFC, Nate gets the carrot.
I was 21 years old, and I just smoked through these fools, choked them all.
Fuck you, bitch. What? You want to fight in the house? Go. Yeah, motherfucker. Down the house. Yo.
They just have that Stockton just confidence. Those guys are fucking animals. I will buy their pay-per-view every single time they fight, no matter what. I think a lot of that unstoppable will, though, comes from him doing triathlons.
And on top of that, black belt jiu-jitsu skills, really good wrestling takedown defense, fucking chin made of iron, and an unstoppable will.
It's Nick Diaz. No one can top this man right here.
How do you think Nate got such that star power?
He legitimately doesn't give a fuck. He smokes weed all the time. People love it.
I remember Dana White flying me out when I was a youngster.
That was a bad fucking fight. It was awesome. I'm rich. I'm so proud of you, kid. That was awesome.
It was like the machine. The machine. You know what I'm saying? Dana White's flying me out like, hey, come on, let's play poker and do this and that. I'm just a kid. He takes me to play poker. I don't know how to play no poker. So now I realize, like, oh, it was my time. He was like,
Kidding me? This is our guy. We just don't want to tell nobody this is our guy, or why, because then his value goes up, and then he gets what he wants, and we don't want to give him what he wants. We want.
I was too young and I didn't know nothing about none of that. So I had to learn that from experience. Now I know that. I'm like, okay, so I missed that boat.
But the machine was already at work on another play.
Tell me what you're thinking right now. George St. Pierre, call out that. I see you walking around. You've been screaming, George. What's on your mind right now?
I don't think George is hurt. I think he's scared. I think he's scared to fight everybody right now. What's up? Where you at, George?
George St. Pierre flipped out tonight. You're gonna think I'm full of shit, but this is the truth. I quote, he's the most disrespectful human being I've ever met.
You've said that Nick was disrespectful and that you really wanted to beat him, so...
And I'm gonna put the worst beating you've ever seen on him in the UFC.
I don't believe Nick Diaz is a bad human being. That's not what I said.
Is what George St. Pierre said.
Nick is not crazy. Nick is a very, very smart guy.
George St. Pierre is a very nice guy.
He's one of the nicest guys I've ever met. And
the UFC and the poster making me this ugly 209 villain, and like I'm the
motherfucker, man. He laughed my way. He's finished. Wait for me to come back in a year and
I gotta be the bad guy. You gonna point the finger, make me the bad guy. I'm the bad guy. Now I get to fight. I'm a bad guy. I'm a violent person, and
I am so much. I hope he will win this fight all the way. So I'll fight him again.
He starts talking shit, going like, okay, Nick Diaz is a bad guy. They ate it right up, and it was bullshit, and it was poison.
I didn't remember said that. They put that in the promo. Like, it's the promo. That's why we're gonna make money on Saturday, man. That's what sells.
George likes to say I remind him of the bullies that picked on him growing up, or they had to deal with. You know, I want to say, like, how many times does someone put a gun to your head? How many kids put gum in your hair growing up? Like, should I go further back? I mean, we have to deal with these things.
Do you really think I'm afraid of you?
Hey, that's fine. Okay, no, I don't.
You think I'm afraid of you, man? Are you crazy in your head, man? I'm not scared of you. You'll see Saturday if I'm scared of you.
All right. Why are you mad, bro? Because you're full of shit and everybody knows it? In my opinion, there's something wrong with this sport right now. If the fans were educated enough to understand, then they would know that they're educated on what's been marketed to them. Just like any company does. Just like any foods, they market, they advertise. They're selling y'all wolf tickets, people. You're eating them right up. George here is selling you wolf tickets. Dana here, he's selling you wolf tickets. The UFC is selling you some wolf tickets. And I don't think George is a bad guy. I don't. I think he's a good guy. I don't think he deserves anything bad. I think he's a nice guy.
For the winner, by unanimous decision, Pequeño, and still the undisputed UFC welterweight champion of the world, George Russell.
something to Nick. Nick Diaz is a good guy. And please, give him a hands up for Nick Diaz, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much.
Things would only get worse from there.
It's my understanding that you're a UFC fighter. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Do you have reasonable cause to believe that you are going to be subject to criminal prosecution?
This guy's smoking pot. He's not doing meth.
Yeah. Did you consume marijuana?
Fifth Amendment.
And did you not?
Fifth Amendment.
It's not like he's doing steroids.
The steroid, y'all should be focused on that, like the enhancement of the fighter.
They look at marijuana as a painkiller.
So if I took an Advil before the fight,
You can't do it. You can't even take a sleeping pill before the fight.
Did you not attend that pre-fight drug testing because you knew you were going to fail?
Fifth Amendment.
Was that a true statement?
Fifth Amendment.
Was that a false statement?
Fifth Amendment.
The other thing is this. You have to not smoke marijuana for 24 hours.
That's it?
Yeah, he fights 3 times a year. So you can't stay off marijuana
Nick, come here,
for 24 hours for 3 days a year.
I'm pretty pissed off, you know what I mean? Like, I got into this sport, like this exact reason of being stuck in a room like that with people like that.
Do you read English?
Fifth Amendment.
Do you understand English?
Fifth Amendment.
It doesn't even make sense. It's crazy.
Damn, Nick, it's hard to be your attorney now, Nick.
What it all boils down to is Nick Diaz doesn't give a fuck.
As he should.
The Nevada State Athletic Commission fines Nick for $165K and suspends him for 5 years.
He has to sit out for 5 years.
My brother's got a fight coming up. My brother's, are you mean to tell me I can't even go and corner my brother? He's going in there to fight for his life. I can't even go stand next to him.
He said, I'm just upset I can't be there for my brother right now since he's going to be fighting soon.
I can't even go and help my little brother. And it's like, you know, I'm like, y'all can get knocked the fuck out.
It's my bad he even got into this sport and he gets his face kicked in and they don't even pay him. I got us in this, and if I don't make any money, I don't have any way to get us out. So he felt responsibility for you. Had you ever heard that before?
It's all good now. Say, I signed up. You know, I'm the one who came. As long as he's I just don't like hearing him not happy.
Nate doesn't know it yet, but his life's about to change.
Fuck that. Conor McGregor, you're taking everything I work for, motherfucker. I'm gonna fight your fucking ass.
The main thing to succeed in this game is to either be me or fight me. Everything else is peanuts.
I think one of the reasons why Nate Diaz versus Conor McGregor was so big is because people love Nate Diaz too.
When everybody's been pumping this dude up, I thought everybody saw what I saw. I'm like, this is some bullshit.
My socks were worth more than your whole suit you had on, you little bum. You broke.
I don't give a fuck.
I don't give a fuck either. I don't give a fuck either.
You little twerp. I can buy and sell you 100 times over.
Nate, your thoughts on Conor taking a swing at you?
Rich kids shouldn't fight ever. Real people fight. Real fighters fight, not rich kids.
I'll gut you like a fish. I'll ride into Stockton and take everyone out. Full of snitches in Stockton.
He's like a little cholo gangster from the hood. He makes gun signs with the right hand and animal balloons with the left hand.
I'm just looking at your little frame.
Yeah.
And it just reminds me of an injured gazelle.
Right. No one knows what gazelle is anyway. It's America. Get it right.
I'm going to talk about money because we are the business network. All that
I'll take
sort of
over
stuff.
from here, Nate. You can bounce. Take a coffee break, Nate. And by coffee break, I mean bring me my coffee.
No. They want you to give us a quick count to 10, both of you gentlemen, if you don't mind, just if you wouldn't mind counting to 10.
Nate can only count to 5.
Oh.
Count to 5, Nate, will you, if you can? You up with that coffee.
Counting, how about
And
that?
hurry up with that coffee.
That's the only thing that kind of might have irritated me. It seemed real rehearsed.
But all I want is a thank you, or even a little dance.
Welcome.
Dance for me, Nate. Dance for me. And don't look me in the eye when you dance.
Your whole thing. Little crackhead SS. You'll do nothing. Shut your fucking mouth, you'll do nothing. You'll do fucking nothing. Not one of you will do nothing. Get the fuck out of here. Fuck you.
Pack your bag and baby, let's go. See when I enjoy the West Coast. Hit the beach where we can lay low.
That's a wrap.
Come on back over here. Let me talk. Let me talk.
I was just giggling at his little soft body.
Fuck this little bitch. Fuck.
Nate Diaz, ladies and gentlemen.
He even touches him. My gun's on.
What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? You'll do nothing. You'll do fucking nothing. You're a threat to the community. You.
Baby, let's go.
Join St. Pierre and watching Nate Diaz versus Conor McGregor. Oh my God. Conor got on this one. Taking it to McGregor here. This is a crazy good fight, guys.
People want to see. Yeah.
Did you think your brother was in trouble after the first round? Or
Shut it down. Shut it down. Get this shit out of here.
Trying to get out of it. Connor's in serious trouble. 1 minute on the clock. Diaz gets the out. My goodness. Now he's got the back. That's it. He's got the tap. He tapped. He's done it. He tapped. Nate Diaz, you just shook up the world. How's that feel?
Hey, I'm not surprised, motherfuckers.
The rematch happened shortly after. McGregor wins in a controversial decision.
Like, I more for sure didn't lose that fight, you know what I'm saying? But
I think everybody in this room wants to see number 3.
Hey, we're going for number 3. Fuck.
The trilogy will never happen. McGregor will go on to fight Floyd Mayweather, while Nate...
And now I got to fight ranked 27 ranked fighters and work my way back up, and he's the double champ.
The UFC uses Nate to hype up other contenders. So he loses to Masvidal, and Masvidal goes on to get a title shot. He loses to Leon Edwards, and Leon Edwards goes to get a title shot.
Like, you have to really check the history books, though. Like, everybody that fight gets the title fight, so why?
so I'm making big money deals for everybody else.
Congratulations to Leon. It's hard, you know what I mean? Like, to watch my brother to go into this thing when I wasn't like a part of the whole system. I took harder punches watching that than I ever did in sparring or in any fights. It's just my brother, it's my baby brother, you know? It's hard to watch him fight. I'm like, this isn't going good for us.
Would you prefer he stopped fighting at this point?
Oh, of course, but I'm sure he would prefer me stop fighting too. I wanted to start a school and teach some of the week, and that should have worked out. But you know, I had a few people kind of screw me around, and then I realized like I don't really have that many real friends. And I said, man, I'm really like, I'm in big trouble now.
Are you happy, Nick? Are you happy in life? Is life good?
No. My brother just got kicked in his face, and I've been having a really hard week. And I can't blame anybody really. It's my fault for making those few wrong turns that I did.
Nate has only one fight left on his contract, but the UFC doesn't want to give it to him because they know he wants to leave. He won't resign.
I'm trying to fight somebody in the UFC, like ASAP, but nobody don't want to fight. I've been trying to get something busy for a minute.
They are, for whatever reason, not giving you that fight. How are you feeling about this situation? Prime of your career, 13 months, no fight.
Nate Diaz has been very vocal recently about saying...
They're not going to let me go. I asked for 20 fights.
You guys have been holding him hostage and all this stuff. He's been trying to get a fight.
When isn't Nate Diaz saying something crazy, you know? This is Nate.
Give me anybody, just let me get the going.
I offer fights He either accepts them or turns them down.
So he's turning them down.
This is the game I'm not going to play.
Okay.
I said, Nate, do whatever you want to do, kid. Go do whatever you want to do.
And then I went in the back and took a piss on the
Pissing on the lawn out back, and you know.
Nick's suspension ends, but he still owes money to the Nevada State Athletic Commission.
in Vegas was still demanding their money, that the marijuana test that he didn't pass. He had his back on the wall.
To be honest with you, I really don't want to do this. I just got to cut my losses and do this fight. That's just how it is. You know, I'm still alive.
Do you feel like you're in a mindset space to walk into that octagon and do what you need to do?
No, but I never do.
Basically, Nick was like, if I'm going to lose, I'm going to lose to Robbie Lawler because he respects Robbie Lawler.
My whole career has been a loss. Like every fight I won, every fight I lost, like, yeah, maybe I made the money, but I never got to be like cool.
What do you mean?
You know?
People love you.
The UFC finally books Nate against the most dangerous fighter in his weight class, Khamzat Chimaev.
Because he didn't re-sign with the UFC gave him the toughest matchup, and that's you, so that he loses in his last fight.
Dana's sending Nate to get slaughtered because Nate's